Pacers get their most complete win of the season, crushing the New Orleans Pelicans in Indiana. Does it mean anything? That stuff just kind of went their way. The starters were great. Thomas Bryant debuted and looked pretty good for a guy who'd been on the team for a few hours. We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today we're discussing the Pacers' win over the Pelicans. Not just a win, they did it. Wire-to-wire dominance, kind of. You can cut out the first 4 minutes, but their most complete game of the year, kicking a team's butt for a full game, not letting up, not letting them fully back in it at any point, looking like they had a game in control the whole time. That has been non-existent for the Pacers this year. A sign of maturity, a lot of stuff went their way, and I want to talk about just that generically before we get to the starters playing awesome and what I think that is stemming from, and Thomas Bryant debuting and looking pretty good for a guy who'd been on the team for a time you can measure in hours, not days. We start with, though, very generically, something I want to get to from this game. I talked about this as far back as with JMV in more detail. I've talked about it really all season, that even when the Pacers would win or have stretches where it felt like they're playing better, there was a little bit of a lack of confidence in the sustainability of that or the team's ability to keep it going because they were never dominant wins, right? The Bulls win the Pacers had last Friday, so by the time this episode comes out 10 days ago, was the first time that they, really control the game like that, wire to wire, and never had, and it wasn't a clutch win, right? They were up most of the game. They never let up the reins, but it was still close at times. They were losing that game in the first quarter. They were really hot from three. Like, it didn't feel like a dominant win, and they won by 9, but there was no clutch time. It was the first time that it happened, right? Because before that, every other game had been within 5 minutes or within 5 points in the last 5 minutes. All that to say, a lot of games have been close for the Pacers this year, even when they win. They had not done what they kind of did to the Bulls. Then they just did it again to the Sixers. And now again, in their most dominant fashion yet, over the Pelicans, where it was double digits for the entire second half and almost 30 minutes of this game. Over 30 minutes of this game, the Pacers were up double digits and just held that. At halftime, they were up a little over 15. The game never got closer than 10 in the second half. Then once it got over 10 with about 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, it was never close again. That is something the Pacers had not done this year, which makes this, to me, their most complete win of the season. Finally, I don't have to go back to talking about that Dallas game. This was their most complete 48 minutes of the season. Here's how I would describe this game as if this becomes a turning point, and I'm not saying it will. Their upcoming road trip is very difficult. If this becomes a turning point, here's how I remember this game. Stuff just worked for the Pacers. And that is generally the sign of a team playing well. Like, even when you mess up, you can find a creative solution to the problem within what you're trying to do. Here's what I mean by that. Macro sense for this game. When the Pacers were playing bad defense, they were playing such good offense that you didn't notice. And when they were playing bad on offense, they were getting enough stops that you didn't notice because the flow of the game was still favoring them. It wasn't like the Dallas win where their offense was just so good all night that even when Dallas was on a run, it felt like the Pacers were fine, right? They would just score enough to get through it. Or the Memphis loss, where the Pacers, despite scoring 45 points in the first quarter, the Pacers couldn't get any stops. So even when they went on a run, it didn't feel like they would get back in it. In this game, it felt like no matter what the Pelicans were trying to do, changing it up to be more offensive, trying to get more defensive force on the floor, they weren't going to be able to do it because the Pacers had answers for everything. The Pacers' highest scoring quarter offensively was the third quarter, which was also the Pelicans' highest scoring quarter. The Pacers' 2 lowest scoring quarters were the Pelicans' 2 lowest scoring quarters. Some of that's game flow, and some of that's the Pacers, again, in a macro sense, just having complete control of a game, something that has not happened this year. In a more micro sense of the things just going their way kind of stuff, I could point to a gazillion plays, and 2 stood out to me. I don't want to get too bogged down in the details of describing an entire play for those who missed the game. One in the first half was Myles Turner caught the ball under the basket. And I think a 1-on-2, 1-on-1.5, it was kind of transition. And he went up, and he thought he got fouled, and he missed the layup. And he kind of like sulked-ish. He didn't really go up right away for the rebound on the offensive end, but it kind of fell his way. And so once he realized there was no foul call, he went up and got it and then hit a really tough layup 1-on-3 and did get fouled. So on a play where Myles Turner missed a tough layup, they get 3 points in the end of it because the ball bounced their way and he did a good job to finish it and draw the foul. There was a play in the second half. TJ McConnell was driving from the left slot. He tried to throw the ball cross court to the opposite corner. Really bad pass. Almost went out on the baseline. Saved by Obi Toppin, right? Toppin misses a shot. McConnell rushes in for the rebound. Throws it to Toppin again. Toppin shot fakes an open three. Steps to his left. Takes a contested three and scores. Some of those plays were the Pacers making their own luck. Myles Turner made the shot. Myles Turner got the rebound. TJ McConnell got the rebound. Obi Toppin made the shot, right? Of course, things look good when stuff goes in. But those plays were like botched plays, like something went wrong. And it just worked, right? And that was kind of reflected on defense, too. I thought the Pacers' rim defense was really good in this game. We'll talk about that a little bit in the second segment and the things that went well on this one. They gave up 48 in the paint. They had 18 allowed in the paint through the first 23 minutes and 55 seconds. The Pelicans hit it too just before the halftime buzzer. They were doing a great job walling off the paint. And some of that was their rotations under the basket were awesome. Even when they'd mess up, air quotes, on the perimeter and get beat, someone was there to help and make sure it was still a successful play, even when something went wrong. Stuff the Pacers wanted to do just in this game just worked, even when they messed up. And that's, you know what kind of team that happens to? A good one. And the Pacers aren't a good team this year, to be clear. They're 12-15. I am not calling them a good team. I'm telling you that they were a good team in this game. I just wrote a story before this game about the Pacers being so inconsistent this year, and many who like sports or follow the NBA or whatever equate inconsistent and bad. And I thought my argument was pretty good why they are inconsistent and not bad, but mostly bad because they're below 500. But that is also an important distinction from this game. They played good. That doesn't mean they are good. They are inconsistent. That doesn't mean that you need to equate them to bad. But this was the high end of their inconsistent play in a way that makes me wonder, can they do this again? Because stuff just worked, right? Their game plan was clear. They wanted to wall off the paint and make it hard for Pelicans attackers. CJ McCollum goes 5 for 13 on twos. DeJounte Murray goes 6 for 12 on twos. Trey Murphy goes 3 for 6 on twos. Herb Jones goes 4 for 9 on twos. 50% or worse for every Pelicans perimeter player starter on twos. Pacers did a great job in there, especially that McCollum number. Andrew Nembhard gave him fits, and the Pacers cut him off under the basket. Daniel Tice, 0 for 2 on twos. Javonte Green, I can't do math. 0 for 3 on twos. Brandon Boston, 4 for 11 on twos. Jamal Cain, 0 for 1 on twos. With the exception of Yves Missi, everybody struggled inside the arc for New Orleans, who shot 39.2% as a team. That is what the Pacers wanted to do. They did it. On offense, the Pacers wanted to get their threes. They took 38 for them. That's a good number this year. They made 42.1% of them. They wanted to get into the paint themselves and pass from there. They had 33 assists, 10 for Haliburton, 8 for McConnell, 7 for Nembhard, the exact guys they want to do it. The guys who were supposed to finish plays, largely finished plays. Siakam was awesome. Turner was good. Nembhard was great. Toppin was good. That was, to me, the most complete game of the Pacers season. That's very generic and zoomed out way to describe this game. But I've been waiting to see this happen. They're almost a third of the way through the season. I've been waiting to see a game like this happen because that shows what they're trying to do is there, right? And that's what happened in this game. Even if it doesn't sustain, I'll remember this is a game that shows this is something the Pacers can do. I know the Pelicans are banged up and not very good, but a more banged up, worse version of the same Pelicans team with Elfrid Payton starting gave the Pacers way more fits than this group did. And the Pacers haven't played like this against anybody, even teams worse than who the Pelicans had available tonight. This was an important thing a step for them to take, even if, again, it might not be sustained when they play harder opponents. I think that was important to see them just kick a team's butt and have stuff work and play the way they want and very rarely look rocky. Like they had that stretch at the end of the third quarter in Philly, and some of the fourth quarter was rough that night. I guess you could say the end of this game was bad. Pacers clearly foot off the gas for the last 5 minutes or so, and it got within like 11, I believe. But either way, very comfortable, very impressive. Everyone who played did their job or did a job in a way that got the Pacers a win. They had a full rotation of 9 guys that they trusted, and they won. And this is something they need to sustain. If they can hold that level, if they can hold that level through the next 4 games, getting to after Christmas when they play OKC, that would do a ton for their season, right? It would keep them afloat through a tough stretch. And this is proof that they can do it. It's not proof that they will do it, as they've shown all season. Roller coaster, up and downs. We've seen it all year. But this was a game that the Pacers had not shown yet, and they did. And now I'm going to talk about the individuals that made it happen, which was basically everybody, but loved the starters in this game. Toppin was great, and we have a lot to discuss with Thomas Bryant, the new Pacer who debuted in a very meaningful way. And I think a big takeaway from his debut has less to do with him and more about the rest of the team. All coming up here on Locked On Pacers. Before we get to any of that, though, first up, I need to talk to you guys about the great people at Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. We also need to talk about BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy during these warm winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket, mug of hot chocolate, watching a movie with family is the best way to spend the month of December. Well, for others, therapy can be a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the seasons change. Not only those reasons, therapy can be helpful for so many things, like learning positive coping skills, learning to set boundaries, and empowering you to be the best version of yourself. It is not just for people who've experienced major trauma or something of that nature. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. Switch at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Our second listen should be Locked On Pelicans. Here, Jake Madison somehow makes sense of the 5-20-something Pelicans. They're bad. They're very injured. They're very bad. I asked Willie Green about managing an injured team because the Pacers and Pelicans have both had to deal with that this season. The Pacers can say, oof, they've been on the bad luck side of the injury bug, and they'd be right. But they have had nothing compared to the Pelicans this season. That first segment was a lot of very anecdotal stuff, but I've been talking about that kind of game so much that I wanted to talk about what it meant for it to finally happen. Now let's talk about how the Pacers did this. I don't really know if I mentioned very many individuals in the first segment, but to me, the standout thing about this game was how good the starting five was. It was tremendous, and the bench was good. Obi Toppin was really great. But that starting five had, especially since Nembhard returned, been like, okay, but not exceptional. You know, they had found success at times. They were really good and connected in this game in a way that was super, super impressive to me. Obviously, Haliburton was great. Probably their best scorer of the night, or at least in terms of threat. Pascal Siakam was great finishing plays. Haliburton, 21 and 10. Again, 3 steals, 4 boards. And just the threat level he was gave the Pelicans so much trouble, right? They were up on him far from the basket. This goes back to what I talked about with him taking threes, not making, taking threes. You know, they were trying to force the ball out of his hands. He said no problem. He kept it moving, even though he had 4 turnovers. And that's why he was +9, despite not having the greatest game, but pretty good. 6 for 14 was Tyrese Haliburton in this game. That was the worst shooting percentage of any starter. That says everything to me about how well that group played and the shots they were able to find. As a unit, the starting five in this game was tremendous. They played 18 minutes together and were +10. That's awesome. That's exactly what the starting five should do in a game like this. And I think the reason they've looked better of late, not like super better, you know, but in these last couple games, has been Andrew Nembhard's return, right? I think that has made this group look super potent again. And specifically, I mean his return to playing normal minutes, right? He played 30 minutes that final game before their 4 days of practice. He was +4 that night and played very well. And then Excuse me, that was against Chicago. He was +4. He was good against Charlotte also, though, with 10 points. Then he was +24 against Philly with like a billion unsung hero plays. I talked about that after that game with 7 assists, 4 boards, good defense on Maxey. And then again today, he has been really rounding into form recently. And this is what he's always been good at. And the reasons why I have gushed about him for forever and ever and ever, despite him averaging like 9 and 4 and everybody thinking he's bad for some reason. He's a great defender who's just the ultimate connecting piece, both because of what he allows the Pacers to do and the way he allows them to play, and because he's good at stuff. The thing that's always mattered to me with him being out, and I talked about this when I talked about who they potentially miss most from injuries, is not only is he good, but the Pacers like having 2 point guards, really 2 ball handlers who can distribute on the floor at the same time. And with McConnell, Nembhard, and Haliburton all available, they can do that. And so now that Nembhard's back tonight and against Philly, and really when he's just playing at his best in terms of assessing where he can attack, when he can really take the pressure off Haliburton by just taking the matchup who is not the best defender, right? In this game, DeJounte Murray is a decent good defender who had an all-defense season in the past. Okay, he's on Haliburton. Great. So who's on Nembhard now? CJ McCollum? You going to put a wing on him and then let, Mathurin or Siakam get going? That's not something teams want to do. So Nembhard gets all these chances. And yes, he, like Haliburton, had a turnover issue tonight, but he also had 7 assists and 17 points on 8 shots, got to the line a bunch and just tore things up. Great defense and effective offense lead to a +18. That's a team high. And he really just, with the passing and with the quick decision-making, brings all these players together in a way that I think has been really, really important for the Pacers of late. He looked very good in this game, and that's why I think their starters have looked better recently as well. Myles Turner, another great night, 4 blocks. He was a big part of that rim protection I mentioned in the first segment. He had 14 points and 6 boards. And most importantly, I'll talk about this more in the third segment, played 28 minutes in this game. I'll talk about why that's important in the third segment, but I thought that was very noteworthy that he was able to do that and only play that amount of minutes. Pascal Siakam, a beast all season with 22 on 16 shots. He made 3 threes. They were beautiful, high arcing, all swishes. Ben Mathurin only took 6 shots. Let me talk about Ben Mathurin for a second. Ben Mathurin had 8 points in this game and 6 rebounds, and I thought he was awesome. All my first 3 notes in this game were Mathurin. The first 2 possessions of this game, drive, hits traffic, kick, great pass. Second possession, or to the corner, by the way, a tough pass to the corner, generated an open 3 for Andrew Nembhard. Next possession, drive, sees defense, kicks to Siakam, gets it back, drives in again, makes a layup, right? Drives in again later, finds another shooter. None of those passes led to assists, but early in the game made it very clear to me that he was locked into the details, making the right decisions with the pass, shooting at the right moments. Only taking 6 shots is the fewest of any starter is a major thing for Ben Mathurin. It's not something you see from him very much. He's had a couple of these games recently where I walk away going, he didn't take a lot of shots, or wow, he was really focused on the little things with passing or rebounding in this game. This was another one of those. And so with Nembhard out there, with Mathurin playing like that, with good effective play finishing from the front court, you get a good starting lineup game again for the Pacers. And that is how, to me, they rolled through this game and looked quite good. Doing it, their bench was fine. Last year, their bench was better than this year's bench, but they've had better bench games. So their bench was fine. Toppin was great. McConnell was as he usually is, but I thought the starters carried in a way that hasn't always been the case for them, and I thought that really mattered. Not that the bench wasn't any good. Toppin is on quite the tear. By the way, in Philly with Nembhard back in the group, the starters played 11 minutes and 20 seconds. They were +16, right? So this starting 5 that they have right now, which is what I think some thought the change could be when the team's fully healthy. We'll see what happens when Nesmith returns, is starting to round into form. And I think Nembhard's return has been a big part of that. Toppin was great. Again, like I just said, been on an absolute heater. Again, the timing is purely coincidental. I just keep bringing it up because it's right when I talked about him. But I did that whole show about the Pacers on-off numbers and their bench in a very numbers-heavy episode. And a lot of it was hey, Obi hasn't been great this season, right? He's had kind of a down year. Well, since then, literally almost exactly to the day I published that, because I guess I'm just dumb, which is true, he's been amazing. Absolutely exceptional. The month of December specifically is the perfect time to describe this turning point. 16 in their first game of the month, 15, 13, 17, 11, 20. Then again today with 16, 4 of 6 from deep. He hit, I think, his first 3, 5 boards, 2 assists, 3 steals. Him and Haliburton had 6 of the Pacers' 9 steals in this game. He was awesome again. Toppin is on a heater. He is on fire from the field. recently. Even when his threes aren't falling, his twos are. Entering the day, though, in the month of December, he was shooting 57, 39, 90 from the field and averaging 15 and 7. I mean, that's just awesome, awesome stuff. And he did it some at the 4, some at the 5 tonight. So kind of a changing role situation. And this game's going to bring those percentages up and his scoring number up and his rebound number down a little bit. He was great again. He is on a roll at a great time for the Pacers. He's really transformed things. I'd be curious, and I hope to talk to him about practice this week about if he changed anything or if he just is seeing shots go in. McConnell was good. He played some nice defense, as did Jarris Walker, though Walker had a rough offensive night. He was the only player who shot below 40%, but he did have 9 rebounds and 2 assists, only 1 turnover. That's fine. And Thomas Bryant, who we're going to close with today, makes his debut, surprising me and presumably more than just me. Played 11.5 minutes, didn't miss a shot, overcame a rough first stint to have a pretty nice game. We'll close with some early Thomas Bryant impressions, and he will be talked about as this week continues. That's to close out today's Locked On Pacers. Before we do that, though, we have to talk about the great people over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook because right now, new customers on FanDuel can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. How about that? The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all right in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, happens to everybody at some point, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet, and that is on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. We're about to talk about the Pacers' new player they acquired via trade. So listen to Locked On Heat to hear about their side of trading Thomas Bryant to the Pacers, or Locked On Warriors / Locked On Pistons / Locked On Nets, because all those teams made moves over the weekend as well. Some trades, some waivers, some signings, goofy stuff in Detroit. Hopefully Kuka Hill can break it down. Trade that made a lot of sense to me for the Nets and the Warriors, involving Dennis Schroeder and some draft picks. So Thomas Bryant to the Pacers, 2031 second round right to swap picks to the Heat. Pacers will take that, certainly. They didn't actually lose any draft capital, just kind of worsened their 2031 outlook. Are we all going to be here in 7 years? Either way, Thomas Bryant, they needed a backup center very badly. They specifically needed a backup center making his salary or less, and they got him. And what stood out to me, I talked about that stuff a little bit on Saturday, but just like stylistically, he's done a little bit of everything in various roles with past teams. Shot it, played inside, kind of an athletic finisher. Let's see what the Pacers need him to be, right? And we'll see what that evolves into when he's on the team for more than a few hours. The trade became official, at least on my phone, at like 10 a.m., and he was playing at 5, right? That's 7 hours he's been on the team officially. That's a quick crash course in learning a new team. You got to keep it simple for a guy like that. And his first stint, immediately you were like, he didn't shoot. I think he made one shot, like a bounced in jumper from the free throw line, but he had like a 3 in the key and they took him out a little quick. It was fine, but you need a little more there. But then from the rest of the game on, he was awesome. Made all his shots, made a 3, battled with Yves Missi on the glass, even though he only finished with 2 rebounds, had a block, 7 points without missing. It's great. Really nice debut, right? Just showed what he can do with the range, played inside. And again, if he rebounds, he will immediately fit for the Pacers. We'll see what this expands into when he plays more and he knows the schemes more and he knows the plays and he knows his teammates better. But one, impressive start like that, right? Rick Carlisle described him as a guy, one, energized by an opportunity. He'll play more here than he was with Miami, but 2, a guy who's happy to be where he played his college basketball. I found it very endearing to hear Thomas Bryant, who was with the Hoosiers, nearly a decade ago now at this point, talk about calling it Bankers Life Fieldhouse. That's what it was to him. And now it's Cambridge. So he'll learn a lot of lingo to learn, not only within the Pacers systems. It was very funny to watch him get in the zone defense and try to get around and figure out when to cover the big and when not to. And also learn the lingo of where he is now, his new reality of his new arena and where he's going to practice and stuff. And we'll get to talk to him this week as he kind of goes through all that. But we got to talk to him after the game, which was very fun. I thought he played fine for a debut. Nothing like so standoutish about how he's going to change the team with his specific play. Although I think inside-out ability from a backup big is something Jalen Smith had that was pretty valuable because he can kind of copy the Myles Turner style that could apply to Thomas Bryant, albeit not at that scale, right? Jalen Smith is a better player than him, but I'm looking forward to seeing what this goes into. And it's, of course, easy to gush about a guy when he doesn't miss a shot and has 0 turnovers and 0 fouls. But it was like a fine game, a fine debut from a guy who had, again, even when this episode comes out, will have not been on that team for 24 hours yet officially, right? So I liked the debut from Thomas Bryant just in terms of what he did on the basketball court. Full stop right there. That was good. Here's what stood out to me in terms of the macro effect on the Pacers, for lack of a better term, right, is two things. One is the first, I already talked about this thing, so I'll say it first. Myles Turner played 27 minutes and 54 seconds. So let's say 28 minutes. And I put this in my story about the trade for Thomas Bryant, right? Myles Turner has never played as much as he has this season, ever, right? And say what you want about load management minutes and all that. I don't really give a rat, but he's played over 30 minutes in his career once ever before this year. That was his second season. He was 20. And every other year he's been below 30. Oh, excuse me. He played 31 minutes in 2021, 22 as well. Like, I said the wrong year. 2020, 21 as well. But he got hurt that year. He only played 47 games. So this year he was at 31.6 career high minutes per game entering this game. And he's older now than he was for those seasons, right? I think the right number of minutes for Myles is probably about 29, maybe even a little lower, just to have him fresh for the postseason and keep him healthy, right? Last year he played 27, which was his lowest ever since his rookie year, I guess. And he played 77 games. Like, there is the right balance to strike there. And this year, he has barely missed any time, and they would like to have his minutes lower, I would imagine. I don't know that, but I assume that's the case. So it stood out to me in this game that even with Thomas Bryant on some shorter stints, right, he got pulled after some mistakes, they were able to squeak in enough Thomas Bryant and enough Toppin at the 5 to get Myles Turner to exactly 28 minutes. And they even played the starters pretty deep into this game because it got not dicey, but closer in the fourth quarter. So I think that is a reasonable thing to expect, is that his minutes landed about that. And so obviously that's an important ripple of the Thomas Bryant trade is the minutes load on Myles Turner. Duh. When a backup center comes, the starting center will play less for a team in the Pacers situation. But the fact that it was to this extent already in Thomas Bryant's first day, like, I'd imagine his minutes will go up, not at the expense of Turner's, most likely at the expense of the Toppin at the 5 lineups. Toppin will just play the 4 instead, and someone else will play less. My guess would be Johnny Furphy. But either way, I thought that was a noteworthy starting takeaway, is that, okay, this allows the Pacers to land where they want, so much so that they went to it right away, right? They even tried already to make sure Turner's minutes landed where they should. And then they went small with Furphy, like I said, for 12 or so minutes, and they went with Thomas Bryant for a while, and it worked out. Thing two is another player that I think kind of slides back into a role that they want. And that's Jarace Walker playing the 3. You know, that was something before the season that we all talked about a lot. The Pacers talked about it. Every podcast about the team talked about it. Lots of articles talked about it. I wrote about it and talked about it around Summer League, right? Jarace, to get him on the floor more, a focus from the team this summer, both because they think he'd be good at this position and exactly that, he could get minutes this year, was he needed to be a 3, play the 3. And that would put him between, Toppin Jackson and McConnell Mathurin with the bench. And now obviously the season's been so screwy that you just laughed hearing Jackson and Mathurin's name with the bench for opposite reasons. But that was the goal, right? And in those opening games, he'd play like half, and then they'd be like, oh, we need Ben Shepherd, and they'd play Ben Shepherd. But at least they were getting Jarace minutes, and then he's been needed with so many injuries. And that was my theory for him playing more this season anyway, was there'll be more injuries than last year. Didn't expect this much, but hey, Jarace has played more, right? Full stop, that's been good. He's certainly shown signs of growth this year. Already played well over his minutes from last year this year. But now they can get him where they want it, right? All the stuff he did in the offseason, he didn't have to abandon it. It's not like playing the 4 is so much different that he's totally lost. But like now all the stuff he focused on and the role he thought he'd be playing and the players that he thought would be next to him doing those things will happen. And it will make more sense, the matchups, for him to be guarding certain perimeter players when he's at the 3 and not the 4. And the cross matching will make more sense, and it'll be better for him. And so even though Walker did not have a great game specifically, he dominated the glass and had a nice assist night and was still +6 with 8 points. If he went 5 for 10 and just had a nice shooting night, it would have looked like a really good game for him, right? So that's the easiest possible correction, is just the shots go in. I didn't feel like he took any terrible shots, maybe 1 or 2, a little more than you'd expect in terms of difficulty. But if Thomas Bryant is an adequate backup center, that is probably worth what they gave up already by itself, which is basically just a swap rights that might even not be anything if they don't end up swapping picks, right? The Heat savings was a big factor in making the trade possible. So, of course, if they get an upgrade at backup center, that's worth it. If they also get better Myles Turner per minute, then it's even more worth it. And if they also get better Jarris Walker, or like Jarris that they thought they were preparing for, that's more worth it, right? So those all might be ancillary things that end up being nothing, but it's just stuff I noticed during this game that are possible because they literally have a 5 now. Moses wasn't effective enough. Moses Brown wasn't effective enough for these ripple effects to take hold. They needed to play Myles Turner instead of him a lot, and they needed Jarris to play the 4 still because they weren't playing Moses very much. And Freeman's too small, even though he's played well, to consistently play the role yet until he gets a little more skill. So this is the solution. And it worked great so far. And I'll be curious what this looks like. We'll do a deep dive into Thomas Bryant tomorrow. Looking forward to that, going through the synergy numbers like we did with Moses Brown, like we do every time the Pacers acquire a new player. So tomorrow, the classic How Thomas Bryant Can Help episode will be here. It'll hit a little different because he's already played a game, but hey, it'll still be really fun. Plus a couple more things that I find interesting at this early season. And then 2 guests, Tuesday and probably Wednesday, Thursday will be our 2 guests this week. Got to get guests in before Christmas, before they want to spend time with families and not me, which is totally fair and expected. Tomorrow, though, again, talking some Thomas Bryant. More fun Pacer stuff coming this week because they once again have 3 days off. This crazy stretch of 2 games in like 10 days, and they took advantage. They won them both. So plenty more Pacers coverage to come here on Locked On Pacers. You can find me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Tony R. East, and you can find this podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Thank you guys a ton for watching and listening today. Be back tomorrow. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.